Welcome back. Let's remind you of our top stories here on Al Jazeera. Sudan's President Omar al-Bashir has formally accepted the South will break away from the North to form a new state. He spoke hours before official results were released. They're due to be announced shortly. The founder of WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, has returned to court in the UK in his latest attempt to fight extradition to Sweden over claims of sexual misconduct. And talks between the Egyptian government and opposition groups about the country's political crisis have failed to end protests across the country. Thousands of demonstrators are still on the streets demanding the immediate resignation of President Hosni Mubarak. The brother of a senior Google executive who was detained in Cairo on January 28th has told Al Jazeera he has been released. Wael Ghonaim's family and a business associate had earlier said they were expecting him to be freed on Monday. A video claiming to show him being captured has been posted on the internet. It shows men in plain clothes grabbing a man and leading him away. Al Jazeera cannot verify whether this is the actual moment when Ghonaim was grabbed, but it has helped to fuel the campaign to have him released. Wael Ghonaim is Google's head of marketing for the Middle East and North Africa. He posted messages on Twitter as he took part in the pro-democracy demonstrations. He's been described as a central online activist whose capture has made him a symbolic leader for the protesters. According to a senior aide to opposition figure Mohammed al-Barari, Ghonaim also set up the official campaign website of Mr. al-Barari. Let's speak now to our correspondent Ayman Muhiddin. He joins us live from Cairo. Ayman, what more do you know about Ghonaim's release?
Well, we know that it has been confirmed by Egyptian state media. The newspaper Al Ahram reported about 5:15 local time that Wael Ghonaim had been released a short while ago, and that in fact he would be heading to Al Tahrir Square, or Liberation Square, which according to Al Ahram did draw a great round of applause from some of the protesters that had been camped out there now for several days. He is a widely well-known figure now as a result of these protests. And in fact, you know, you were talking about one of his Twitter messages. In fact, I just wanted to read it out to you because this is one of the last ones he did write. He said he was very worried about Egypt. It seems that the government is planning a war crime tomorrow against the people. Now, that was sent out late on January the 27th, the day before those clashes erupted on Friday. So Wael Ghonaim is a person who has become a great symbol of not only the online struggle and the role that the internet has played in these protests and bringing together the community, but also he has become a symbol of a lot of the people who are held or who have been held by the Egyptian government over the last several days with very little information about their whereabouts. And I think it has galvanized more people when they see people like Wael Ghonaim remain in Egyptian custody. So still some conflicting reports about whether or not he has actually been released and whether or not he is actually making his way down to Liberation Square.
Meantime, you've been released from custody. You were detained for several hours just yesterday by Egyptian authorities. What was the experience like?
Well, Lida, I can tell you it was a bit of a disturbing experience, not necessarily because of the way the military treated me. I was detained at about 11:45 a.m. and I was held all the way really up until 9 p.m. before I was actually released onto a bridge overlooking the Nile. But what was really troubling about it wasn't the fact that I was blindfolded or handcuffed and asked to sit on the pavement for 5 hours or interrogated, but really some of the images that I saw there along with other journalists about how some of the detainees who were not journalists and how they were being treated by the Egyptian military. You know, we saw them use a great deal of force to try to subdue many of these people that were there, and it was a very disturbing image to see the type of violence that was used, the type of intimidation and the type of tactics. I don't think it was very becoming of this military to use those tactics on people that were already disarmed, people that were widely already seen as at that particular point harmful to a powerful military. So the experience overall very disturbing to say the least. And certainly one that highlights, I think, the difficulty of the military in trying to find itself in this very tight or difficult line that it is trying to walk right now.
The challenges of reporting on the events in Egypt. Good to have you with us, Ayman Muhiddin in Cairo. Now to some other news. Thai and Cambodian troops have clashed for a fourth straight day with hours of shelling and machine gun fire. The soldiers are battling along a disputed border area surrounding a 900-year-old mountaintop temple. The fighting has shocked residents in what are normally quiet rural villages, as Wayne Hay reports.
Living near the Thai-Cambodia border can come at a cost. In recent days, an ongoing land dispute has shattered the peace in this otherwise sleepy Thai settlement. The owner of this house told us she managed to evacuate before a Cambodian artillery shell landed at her back door. This was the scene the night before, dozens of Thai shells streaking across the sky towards Cambodia. Despite the aggression from both sides, the Thai Prime Minister called for a peaceful solution, but said his country will continue to defend itself.
When there is firing into Thai territory, it's necessary for Thailand to protect its sovereignty. We counter the attack and we return fire only at military targets.
However, Cambodian television showed footage of the ancient Preah Vihear temple in the middle of the disputed area, which they allege was damaged by shelling. In Thai territory, the soldiers remain on edge. At checkpoints, supplies are being rushed to the front line. The border villages are now largely deserted. People who have stayed behind say they're ready for more fighting. They've armed themselves and are preparing new bunkers to shelter in. Those who aren't digging in are being catered for in the relative safety of a nearby town. The residents who have fled the fighting have come here to evacuation centres. In this one alone, there are around 9,000 people. Most of them say they're in no mood to go home anytime soon.
I will continue to stay here until the fighting stops.
Given the tension on the border, these people may be here for some time yet. Wayne Hay, Al Jazeera, Kantaralak, Thailand.
A UN-backed tribunal looking into the killing of former Lebanese Prime Minister Rafiq Hariri is hearing legal arguments. One of the key legal issues is what constitutes an act of terrorism. From the Netherlands, Barnaby Phillips reports.
All rise. The Special Tribunal for Lebanon is now in session.
An important moment at the Special Tribunal for Lebanon as it moves from investigation into the courtroom.
Today's proceedings show that Lebanon, a proud founding member of the United Nations, is set on a course for judicial accountability through the rule of law.
It was a massive explosion that killed Rafiq Hariri and many others, and Lebanon is still feeling the tremors of that blast. It's widely suspected the tribunal will indict members of Hezbollah, which is not only a powerful political movement, but also a military one. Its leader, Hassan Nasrallah, says the tribunal is a tool of America and Israel. He says Hezbollah will cut off the hand of anyone who tries to arrest its members.
The trial itself is probably months away, but people in Lebanon are watching events here very closely. They know that decisions taken at this court will shake their country's stability to the core.
They spent the day in complex discussions on the definitions of terrorism, murder, conspiracy. But are these lawyers and judges really immune to all the political tensions?
They are aware of all these sentiments and the impact of what has happened in those days and what is at stake now. Yet they are professionals who do their job in a partial, independent way.
But the wheels of justice turn slowly, and all the time tensions in Lebanon are bubbling away.
Al Jazeera's Barnaby Phillips is in close to The Hague, where all of this is taking place. Did the court clarify then some of these legal definitions?
There was a fair amount of consensus, Gita, between defence and prosecution on the terms, an agreement that on the whole they would be using Lebanese law, and I think that in theory ought to augur well for the smooth running of this trial when it eventually begins. But I hasten to add that that date is some way off. Proceedings ended here a short time ago. The appeals chamber will report back to the pre-trial judge in some 10 days or so, but he will then mull over the case, mull over the indictment which the prosecution have given him for many weeks, probably months to come. Only then he may confirm the indictments and issue arrest warrants. But when you speak to court officials here and you ask them the question, when does the trial itself begin, they're pretty sanguine, pretty downbeat. They say possibly this year, possibly next year. So don't expect any rapid developments. As I said in my report, the wheels of justice here in The Hague are turning slowly.
And this is something that's been going on for quite a while. Obviously, the Lebanese people are watching it very closely, but also many people across the Middle East. Is this about finding the identity, though, of the perpetrators of this act, or does much of it have to do with the political, regional and international dynamics at play?
Well, obviously, you're right. The political repercussions